As far as the tangibles go, all victories are the same, be it against the strongest team in the league or the weakest. Nevertheless, it's sweeter and boosts morale like nothing else when it's a win against a strong one. In today's video, we'll talk about the Vikings cementing the Super Bowl contender role by upsetting Josh Allen of the Bills and two glaring errors by the officials in their recent game. First off, the Vikings finally secured that signature victory. The Minnesota Vikings had a great start to the season. With a 7-1 record so far, they were already at the top of the table in the NFC North. Yet, despite their marvelous numbers, they weren't quite as poised as the team representing NFC in the Super Bowl this year. Why so? Because the team didn't secure a worthwhile victory so far in the season. Most of their victories up till now came from close games. Since week 1, the franchise has never won a single game with a double-digit lead. Moreover, there have been times when they were trailing behind before turning the tables in the last quarter. Some might argue that the Vikings' victory against the Miami Dolphins was proof enough that they could make a deep playoff run. Yet, it's important to note that while the franchise managed to dominate the Dolphins, it came when Miami's star player, Tua Tagovailoa, was on the bench. Even then, the only quarter they managed to dominate was the first one. Apart from that, the two teams remained on par, and the score at the final whistle was 16-24. The victory didn't scream Super Bowl contender team, but they finally secured that signature victory by toppling the Buffalo Bills. The Vikings managed to topple them, but it's also interesting how they turned the game over despite trailing behind by large. Let's talk about the game. Up next, all about the Vikings versus Bills game. The Buffalo Bills versus the Minnesota Vikings game was everything you could expect from a thriller. Quite astonishingly, the Bills established a big fat 27-10 lead by the third quarter. However, as had been their habit since day one of this season, the Vikings never gave up. They managed to get a hold of the game and beat the Bills 33-30. The most interesting part of the game came later in the fourth quarter when the Vikings faced a 4th and goal from the half-yard line with a chance to take the lead. Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills managed to lead the team to a field goal that tied the game. However, the Vikings scored a field goal just minutes into the overtime. The Bills' signal caller then made a splendid effort and took the Bills to the end zone with only 2 minutes remaining. However, cornerback Patrick Peterson was able to post his second interception for the day, which proved to be the final nail in the coffin for the Bills. It's important to note here that the Vikings now sit confidently on a 7-3 record against the Bills. Interestingly, the recent game with a 7th straight win for the Vikings over them. From an imminent blowout to a striking comeback, the game was one of the most memorable in the recent past. Needless to say, that it cemented the Vikings as a force to be reckoned with in the league. Moving on, who won it for Minnesota? The star signal caller, Kirk Cousins, was asked about his feelings after the game by Pam Oliver of Fox Sports. The QB deemed it to be a team win. He added that they were a tough and battle-tested team. However, the signal caller hoped that they would be able to win more convincingly than this. Nevertheless, he was over the moon for a thrilling victory against a strong team. The signal caller threw for 357 yards, completing only 60% of his thrown passes, and received a passer rating of 71.8 for the game. So the QB's response was fair enough, considering it was a team effort. While it's true that Cousins can easily rack up points against weaker teams, he tends to wither in primetime games against strong teams. But that's who the Vikings are as a team. They make up for each other's deficiencies. The two players outperforming everyone on the roster were the running back, Dalvin Cook, and wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. Dalvin proved to be a force to be reckoned with against one of the best defenses in the league. He raked 119 yards, including an 81-yard touchdown on 14 carries. The Bills allowed the Vikings to post only 210 passing yards in total. Out of these, Justin amassed 193 yards all by himself. The total was a career best for the wide receiver who posted the yardage on 10 receptions. One of these was an astonishing one-hand catch from midair. Next up, are the Vikings all set for a Super Bowl appearance? Their victory against the Bills puts them among the league's leading teams. Nevertheless, the issues that could derail the franchise from a deep playoff run were quite obvious in the game. The Vikings' 29th ranked defense in the league allowed a lot of yardage to the opponents. Moreover, for the team to make it to the Super Bowl, their signal caller would have to silence the people who deem him a choker in high-pressure games. Moreover, their ultimate competition, the Eagles, remains remains undefeated in the league, and they're only one of the teams far more complete than the Vikings. Similarly, the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia 49ers have strong defenses. Minnesota might not be the best team in the NFL, however, they are still one, even the strongest ones, that should be on the lookout for. And that's exactly what their victory against the Bills did. Serve a warning to all others in the league. Coming up next, two glaring errors by the officials in the final minutes of the game. First up, were they intentional and which team benefited? Another thing that cements the Vikings' stature as a top contender for a Super Bowl appearance is that their victory came despite two errors that favored the Bills. You heard that right, the Vikings managed to secure a victory even when the Bills got favored unjustly. However, it was confirmed that the errors were unforced and not intentional. Moreover, fortunately, the Vikings managed to win this one despite these slip-ups, which would have caused a big controversy otherwise. The officials themselves admitted afterward that they made mistakes in regulating the game. Quite astonishingly, both came in the last 2 minutes of overtime when they could have had a huge impact. Moving on, the first mistake. This was the more brutal of the two. When the game got tied 30-30 in overtime and the Vikings faced a 1st and goal at the Bills' 2nd-yard line, they pushed Minnesota back 3 yards. However, footage later confirmed that the Bills had 12 defenders on the field and it was an 11-on-12 scenario. Moreover, the extra player didn't seem to be walking off the field. Instead, all 12 players were ready to defend in the pre-snap image. The officials missed the extra player and didn't call it. Many speculate that had it not been for an extra defender, Minnesota could have scored a touchdown, leading the Bills into sudden death. Instead, the Vikings scored a field goal that gave the Bills a chance to stage a comeback in the final minute. Lastly, the second error. Although the first one was in itself a grave one, the second error also proved to be big. In the final minute of regulation, with only 18 seconds left on the clock, the Bills were behind 30-27. At that moment, Josh threw the ball to Gabe Davies for a 20-yard pass that led the team into the field goal range. Gabe caught the ball with a dive and lots of struggles. However, the replay later showed that the ball bounced off the turf before he got hold of it. Unfortunately, the Bills were on a hurried offense, and the official declined to review it. The compromising pass allowed the Bills to score a field goal that tied the game in the final seconds of regulation and got them a ticket for overtime. After the game's completion, Senior Vice President of the NFL, Walt Anderson, addressed the whole issue while talking to the press. He believed the officials were wrong not to stop the play to confirm the catch. Had it been confirmed, the game would have never gone into overtime. He added that since the coaches don't have the option to challenge in the last 2 minutes of regulation, it was the officials' responsibility to request a replay. Thankfully for everyone, despite the grave errors, the Vikings managed to bail everyone out of these blunders. That's a wrap for this video. What are your thoughts on the Vikings' victory against the Bills? Despite serious errors, are they going to the Super Bowl? Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.